It was meant to be a straightforward gesture of ambassadorial goodwill, the Duchess of Sussex visiting an impoverished Nigerian secondary school to help raise funds and awareness for adolescent female education initiatives across the developing world. But when Meghan Markle strode onto the sun-baked parade grounds in an ensemble critics immediately branded as salaciously inappropriate, the smoldering embers of an international firestorm ignited with swift furor. From the moment the former actress appeared before the youths in a sleeveless knit mini dress that brazenly cupped her curves while exposing untamed expanses of toned leg, outrage radiated across the socially conservative Nigerian power structure. Incendiary denunciations from regional imams and traditionalist cultural arbiters flooded media airwaves with dismay that such a high-profile ambassador of Western values could so flagrantly flaunt her body in face of unwitting male adolescents struggling against hormonal impulses. It is a violation transcending the merely disrespectful into realms of despicable depravity that this woman would feel so unguarded in her arrogant indulgence as to parade her sexuality before our nation's children in such a vulgar, indecent display, roared His Eminence Al-Haji Buba Bashir, the Grand Mufti of Katsina's historical capital. As the grassroots furor intensified over broadcasters looping gratuitous slow-motion replays of Markle's hips sashaying exaggeratedly down the airport's arrival terminal, the situation escalated into a full-fledged international incident. With political pressure mounting for accountability over such an ostensibly lurid spectacle, the Nigerian president's wife Aisha Buhari sprang into action with legal maneuverings that reverberated thunderously across the Commonwealth. Within 48 hours of the offending school visit, lawyers representing the deeply religious First Lady unveiled a multi-pronged defamation lawsuit against Markle seeking punitive damages over the systemic indignities and psychological devastations inflicted upon the nation's youth. With its incendiary language condemning the Duchess as a depraved and insatiable narcissist deploying reckless religious persecution through blasphemous erotic exhibitions, the filing's rhetoric left nothing to implication in its open hostilities. This debased cabinet of Western role modeling has for too long foisted gratuitous parodies of impropriety upon our societies through overbearing evangelizations of indecency, falsely embodying empowerment by flouting sacred tenets of modesty and self-restraint, the proclamations aired via televised press conferences contended. It spotlights the unconscionable arrogance permeating these indulgent strains of post-colonial activism in which unacceptable vulgarity gets championed as fearless truth-telling, in direct violation of our most sacred civilizational and pedagogical customs. In the escalating torrent of televised denunciations that rocked the Nigerian mediascape in subsequent days, Markle was portrayed as little more than an archetypal provocateur of decadent, hypersexualized identitarianism eroding traditional socio-religious values. Slickly produced video packages broadcast incessantly made a multimedia case study out of the Duchess's perceived trail of affronts that constituted an ongoing assault on Nigerian sensibilities through the imposition of hedonistic oppressor mores. Footage highlighting the sharp contrast between the bare-shouldered scandalousness on display at the school visit and Nigerian adolescents' enshrined virtues of piety and modesty proved particularly inflammatory. Direct juxtapositions abounded of wide-eyed outrage expressed by male pupils eyeing the Duchess's toned stems to impassioned pleas from faculty chaperones for upholding the moral sanctity of educational spaces. You have this scantily clad foreign temptress sashaying into our hallowed realms of youth enrichment without the slightest attempt to respect or even acknowledge our core ethics around decorum and maidenly propriety, a local headmistress lamented before cameras. She simply barged in with her coquettish American flesh deliriums exposed to inflame the prepubescent passions of our young brethren who remain devoted to a code of conduct antithetical to such provocations. From there, the legal brief accelerated into incendiary rhetorical escalations against the Duchess herself, leveling a staggering litany of unsubstantiated accusations surrounding her perceived immorality and psychosexual depravities. Transcripts even went as far as to accuse the Sussexes of intending the visit strictly to document the corruptive despoiling of innocent African youths, for nefarious purposes related to potential child exploitation and global human trafficking operations. Let this contemptibly vacuous courtesan bedecked in American vice make no mistake, we as guardians of Nigerian morality and traditional institutionalism intend to cease enabling the wanton spread of toxic hypersexualities being imposed through her own variety of neo-colonial savagery. The litigation fulminated at crescendo levels. We shall not cravenly capitulate to agendas of depravity cloaked in euphemistic banners of empowerment and progressivism, when they merely constitute the resurgent armies of hedonism descending once more upon our societies. As these and other even more vitriolic screeds cascaded across the cultural battlegrounds, all pretenses of diplomatic reconciliation crumbled. Wildly circulated social media clips encouraged public demonstrations where effigies of Markle were ritualistically burned to excoriate the professed abuses. Academics from revered universities condemned the supremacist colonial legacies being resurrected in weaponizing biracial totems of sexuality to demoralize Nigerian youth. Even preeminent theologians were mobilized to theologize upon the depraved anti-Islamic pathologies represented by the Duchess's demonic calisthenics of brazen seduction. Lost amongst the groundswells of fiery rhetoric and disintegrating channels of statecraft, of course, were the pragmatic policy goals behind the ill-fated school visit, bringing much-needed philanthropic resources to accelerate education attainment and gender parity for all Nigerian girls. In the tornado of Markle character assassination now dictating all discourses and legal posturings, that nugget of earnest social advocating was quickly subsumed beneath ever-escalating crusades of condemnation. This woman embodies the depravities that would unmake the very fabric of our traditionalist protections, allowing girl children to develop into empowered inheritors of legacy rather than indoctrinated by oppressor delinquencies that remake them into profane chattel, roared a senior cleric called upon to invoke scriptural precedents justifying the stringent countervailing of foreign erotic toxicities. On it escalated from there for weeks and months of lurid bombshells and increasingly baroque broadsides leveling claims of unspeakable psychosexual pathology against the Duchess. Markle was recast through state propaganda channels as an inflictor of hedonistic deculturations upon impressionable Africans. Her very existence was decried as embodying the existential ideological threat of post-colonial identities seeking to toxify traditionalist Nigerian impressions of feminine sanctity. As the international outrage radiated centrifugally across continental frontiers and sparked demonstrations spanning several other national capitals, appeals from Commonwealth authorities and human rights ombudsmen for de-escalation went entirely ignored. With the litigation juggernaut raging unchecked into the courts, Markle was now an irredeemable archenemy of Nigerian indigenous preservation, an absolutist villain whose seductive sermons would unmake all notions of sacred youth and female personhood if not expunged through retributive accountability. She clearly cloaks her profane crusades of salacious moral decay under the guise of benevolent advocacy, all as a mere facade to dismantle our ancestral defenses long upholding African decencies and normative womanhood, screamed one panelist from the State Media Commission convened to theologically dissect Meghan's deeper offenses. It merely reprises the same deceptive subterfuges used by oppressor colonialists throughout the generations in attempting to inculcate indigenous populations with ethno-racial self-hatred and identitarian alienation. Despite vocal contingents within the British royal family and other diplomatic channels appealing for peaceful resolution, the clangors of war only intensified across the ideological frontlines. In blistering proclamations portending existential stakes of civilizational calamity should Markle's perceived crusade prevail, rhetoric